But we begin with the shattered ceasefire in the Middle East. Overnight, Israel struck targets up and down Gaza, blaming Hamas for not agreeing to its latest demands to release the remaining hostages. The Israeli military says it will begin targeted ground offensive as well. The Arab world is condemning Israel for the escalation, while Hamas is blaming the United States for providing unconditional military support to the state of Israel. So joining us now from Jerusalem for more on this is CBS News contributor Robert Berger. So, Robert, at this hour, what is the latest situation on the ground in Gaza?
Well, Israel carried out very heavy bombing overnight in Gaza, and it's continuing now, not at quite the same intensity, which is typical of this kind of war. You see more airstrikes at night, but all indications are from Israeli officials that this was just the opening salvo in a pressure campaign against Hamas. They are targeting, according to the military leaders of Hamas, political leaders, military leaders, of course, gunmen. At the same time, remember, Gaza is about the most heavily populated place on earth, and there have also been reports of a lot of civilian casualties.
So, Robert, I listened to Senator Chuck Schumer this morning on our show, CBS Mornings, talking about the fractured ceasefire, the ceasefire that no longer exists. At one point, he said that the two sides were very, very close. So why did Israel decide to launch these strikes now?
Mainly because Hamas hasn't been releasing more hostages. The last hostage release was 3 weeks ago, and then the phase one ceasefire ended 2 weeks ago. So from the Israelis are saying, well, we've extended the ceasefire, but we're not getting back any hostages. And various proposals by U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff had been rejected by Hamas. So basically, from the Israelis said, well, Hamas is getting a free ride, and now we're going to negotiate under military pressure to try and get some hostages back.
So Prime Minister Netanyahu is not popular in Israel other than with the members of his far-right party, Likud. What's been the reaction to this escalation in Israel?
Well, twofold. I mean, within his own coalition, it's actually strengthened it. A far right-wing party led by Itamar Ben-Gvir, which had pulled out of the government because of the ceasefire, has now returned to the government. So his coalition is actually a little stronger. But on the street, certainly among the families of the hostages, there's enormous concern. They're saying that this is a death sentence for the remaining Israeli hostages. Remember, 24 living hostages still left in Gaza, among 59. The rest are dead. And there's a lot of concern about whether they're going to be able to make it back home now.
And yet, Robert, we saw those images when they released that young mother and her two babies, the bodies of those Israeli citizens back to Israel. And there was parading in the streets. There was jubilation and celebration in the streets of Gaza during that release of that family. And so I wonder what the reaction was with that. I mean, it's sort of like trying to keep two thoughts in your head, right? On one hand, those families who still have remaining hostages want to see them come home. They don't want this to be a death sentence, as you say that some people feel that it might be. And on the other, to Prime Minister Netanyahu's point, they're not releasing any hostages, so this maybe sends a message.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think on the street or among the public in Israel, there's an understanding that you're going to need to do something to get those hostages back. I would say the country is divided with most people, according to polls anyway, supporting an end to the war in order to get the hostages back and then to resume fighting against Hamas. But this Israeli government is taking a harder line. And they say that this military campaign will continue until some hostages come back. One idea being proposed by the mediators, Qatar and Egypt, is at least a release of several hostages to try and get this ceasefire back on track.
All right, well, let's hope that some peaceful resolution can get those families reunited with their loved ones. Robert Berger, thank you as always, my friend. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
All right, I want to bring in CBS News White House reporter Aaron Navarro for more on this. Aaron, what's the latest reaction from the administration to these airstrikes?
Yeah, a U.S. National Security Council spokesperson said last night Hamas could have released hostages to extend the ceasefire, but, quote, instead chose refusal and war. That's a reference to the refusal by Hamas to release more of the 59 hostages that Israel says they have. Hamas has instead tried to get to phase 2 of the ceasefire, including the withdrawal of all Israeli troops from Gaza. We also heard from White House spokesperson and Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, who confirmed last night that the Trump administration was consulted by the Israelis on their attacks in Gaza. Take a listen to what she had to say.
President Trump has made it clear Hamas, the Houthis, Iran, all those who seek to terrorize not just Israel, but also the United States of America will see a price to pay. All hell will break loose. And all of the terrorists in the Middle East, again, the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, Iranian-backed terror proxies, and Iran themselves should take President Trump very seriously when he says he is not afraid to stand for law-abiding people.
And at the beginning of this month, U.S. officials were abroad trying to extend that first phase of the ceasefire in hopes of getting more hostages released. Over the weekend, we saw the Middle East Special Envoy Steve Witkoff said that if Hamas did not release more hostages, they would, quote, pay a severe price. We're starting to see some of that, of course, with these latest strikes from Israel.